A 20-hour fast is my favorite length of fast, and it's what I generally do. So here's a sample schedule that walks you through exactly what to do at exactly what time. It's abbreviated, so that way it'll be nice and easy for you. You're probably wondering, how the heck can Thomas possibly dissect a fast any more than he usually does? Well, here you have it. It's broken down little bit by little bit. So let's break it down. Look, if you want to skip ahead directly to the schedule part, you can, but I'm going to explain some sample eating times and what you should have on hand for a sample 24-hour fast as well. But I also want to explain the key difference, because after a 16-hour fast, you get catapulted into some serious fat burning, and that's why I'm such a big fan of a 20-hour fast. You see, what happens is you start to have lower insulin levels at 16 hours, significantly lower. And what happens is glycerol, which is part of fat that gets mobilized, ends up getting created more. And that creates more gluconeogenesis. The long story short is that there's sort of this equation that occurs when your body starts demanding more glycerol creation, where it forces your body to bring in more fat to turn into glucose. Yes, fat can get turned into glucose because the brain is demanding so much glucose. So the brain's demanding this sugar, and your body has no way to create it, so it actually creates it from glycerol, a component of your fat. So when your body is demanding glucose, but it doesn't have glucose, it starts accelerating this fat burning process in an effort to create glucose. And that starts at 16 hours. So that is exactly why I'm a fan. Also, autophagy increases significantly after 16 hours. So here's some sample eating times. And I've highlighted my favorites. This is the periods in which you would eat. 20 hours of fasting, 4 hours of eating. 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. eating period. That's if you're a morning eater. That's perfect. Then you're fasting the rest of the time. 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., 10 a.m. to 2, 11 a.m. to 3, 12 to 4, and then we get into the evening ones. 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Great if you want to fast during the day and then eat dinner. That's my favorite. These two are my favorites. Then a 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. I don't like to eat that late, so I don't prefer a 9 p.m., but maybe you're a little bit of a night owl. Here's some stuff I think you should have on hand before we get into the schedule. You should have some coffee and tea on hand. You should have some fish oil, some krill oil on hand. You should have some magnesium, just at least in your cupboard. You should probably have some electrolytes that you can add to your water and stuff like that. I highly recommend you have like some bee pollen or some bee propolis, because with a length of fast like this, you're going to need it to replenish a little bit of your B vitamins, but also to help out nutrient absorption. There's a link down below for a company called Beekeepers Naturals, which is the one that I typically use, because bee pollen, although it has carbs in it, it's perfectly keto friendly, and it's probably going to fit the bill the most. So this is what Beekeepers is all about. Check this out. So this is the bee pollen that I talk about, and this is what I would typically use at the end of a fast, like 18, 20-hour fast, just to get a lot of B vitamins in, but also to get me a little bit of that immune support. And if you look at the ingredients, there's only 2 grams of carbohydrates, so it's totally gonna be keto friendly. But then we have propolis. This is what started it all when it came down to beekeepers. This is what started the entire company, because this product can reinvent your medicine cabinet. This product is awesome. So you use a little bit of spray. You don't have to be using it at any specific time. I usually use it at night, and we got, let's see, what is that? Like practically no carbs in there because it's such a minute amount. Anyhow, highly recommend you check out Beekeepers if you're trying to get B vitamins in, if you're trying to help out your immune system a bit, if you're also just trying to reinvent how you look at your medicine cabinet in general. Check them out. Special link, special pricing down below in the description. Then I want you to have apple cider vinegar on hand, and I want you to have lemon, some lemon on hand. It's optional. Bone broth is optional, and cinnamon is optional. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's move into the schedule and have some fun here. This is saying you wake up at about 6 a.m. You could shuffle this to whatever hour you get up. 6 o'clock a.m., you wake up. 6:15 a.m., you have 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar along with your water. What is this going to do? It's going to drive you into a fasted state faster by activating the AMPK pathway. Basically, it puts you into a deeper fasted state so you can get more out of your fast quicker. Between 6:30 and 6:45 is when I recommend you start having your caffeine. Do not wake up and immediately have caffeine, because that does some stuff to your overall neurotransmitters, but also does something to your adenosine receptors. If you wait a little bit after getting up, you'll find you have a much better tolerance, or actually less tolerance, meaning you can get by with less caffeine, which is just better for you in general. Caffeine is great, but we don't want to be loading ourselves with it. Then at 7 o'clock a.m., about an hour after you wake up, is the ideal time to work out. It allows your hormones to kind of get to that advantageous position. So if you're an AM worker-outer, there you go. That's a perfect time. 9 a.m., is when you should probably add electrolytes in. I wouldn't recommend having electrolytes right after your workout. Why? Because your body is really good at developing its own homeostasis and kind of leveraging where electrolytes and where minerals should be. But as you get a couple hours after your workout or 90 minutes or so, then it's not a bad idea to start adding some potassium, magnesium. I recommend just any good quality electrolyte blend as long as it doesn't have artificial sweeteners and doesn't have sugar or carbs in it. Then at 11 a.m., you can still be sipping on caffeine, but this is the point in which you would switch to tea. I want you to switch to green tea because it's a lower caffeine content and I still want you to sleep, but I also want the AMPK activation from the tea. So basically, you start getting to this point where you might start weaving out of a fast a little bit simply because of glucose levels. This kind of helps get that back down. And then at 1 p.m., you're going to have 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar again. You don't have to do it, it's not a must, but I highly recommend it because it keeps you in that deeper fasted state, but it also gives you something, I don't know, a little bit to kind of just give you something, right? So anyhow, then you move in 3 o'clock p.m. If you have a fairly liberal schedule and you can have some ability to do this, given the situation, a lot of us are now working remotely and maybe we have the ability to do that, it would be an optimal time to go do a little bit of light cardio. You are deep in the fasted state at which your body is really, at this time, using fats aggressively. It really is. You're probably, you're 19 hours in. That is like the sweet spot of when your body's using fats. So if you went for just an easy walk or did a little bit of cardio, you could really up your game with your fat loss in this fast. Then at 3:30 p.m., totally optional. But if you're living a relatively stressed out life, like you just have a real job and it's just exhausting, a little bit of cinnamon is going to blunt your cortisol levels preemptively as we go into breaking our fast. If you want the science, I can spill the beans, but basically your cortisol levels are going to be elevated. We want to bring them down prior to eating. Okay, 3:50, so 10 minutes before you officially break your fast. If you are a bone broth person, if you're someone that wants to do it, you don't have to. I understand it's not required. Now would be the time to do it because the bone broth right before you break your fast. So technically your fast is 19 hours and 50 minutes because I'm having you break it 10 minutes early with bone broth. But this is to get the gut a little bit loosened up before we officially, break our fast. 4 p.m., we're breaking our fast with our lean protein. If you are seasoned and experienced, you can add carbs, but I recommend most people, including myself, you do lean protein, chicken, turkey, lean fish, or do some kind of pea protein shake or something like that that is lean and controlled. We want thiamine, that's why we're going for this lean poultry whenever we can. No carbs unless you're experienced. Why? Because I don't want insulin levels going up and throwing off an electrolyte balance by kind of allowing electrolytes that are currently in the bloodstream to shuttle and move really quick. It can actually cause an issue, and an extended, very long fast, it's called refeeding syndrome, which can actually cause some serious health effects. So please keep the carbs minimal or out. This is where you would add the bee pollen, and the reason that it is in there is because there are a lot of studies that show that it restores mitochondrial function after a fast. The mitochondria shifts gears during our fast. It has to go over to fat adaptation. All of a sudden you're adding food in. We want to make sure the mitochondria is adapting, and bee pollen has some really powerful effects of that, mainly because of the richness of B vitamins that are in it. And then propolis, which is another form of like bee pollen or extracted from bee pollen, or extracted from a hive essentially, has a big role in that too. It enhances the restoration of the iron, calcium, and mainly the phosphorus. It sounds like it's a small part of it, but it's something that I learned about a year ago or maybe 6-8 months ago that really leveled up how I feel energy-wise after a fast. So I highly recommend, get your bee pollen wherever you want to, but my recommendation is going to be from Beekeepers Naturals again down below, because there's a special link for you guys to use it because you're watching my channel. Please do check that out. They are experts in their field. They have the clinical science to back it up. They don't just have bee pollen, they have all kinds of other bee products if you're into that, and they are really, really good at what they do, and they're awesome people, so definitely check them out. Then at 5 o'clock p.m., you're going to have protein, fat, and veggies. This is going to be your dinner. Why aren't there any carbs with this meal? You could have carbs, but here's what I'm explaining and stressing to you. Your ketone levels are very high at the end of this fast. So if you can extend the amount of time that your body is still able to leverage ketones, you should. okay? Because ketones are not just about fat burning, they're signaling devices and they do amazing things in your body otherwise as far as anti-inflammatory effects and you name it. Okay, so I do recommend keeping that meal low carb or no carb and keep your calories moderately high via fats, okay? You may want to take some digestive enzymes. Okay, then at 7 p.m., you can kind of do a dinner around 2, okay? You're basically having protein at this rate. If you're staying keto, you just have protein. But this would be your time to add carbs. You could add 100 carbs if you wanted to. Note, you're fasting for 20 hours. Do not try to get as many carbs as you would on a normal day on a fasting day. That's going to be too many carbs at once. However, big, bold, important disclaimer note here. You absolutely should try to get as much protein on a fasting day as you would on a non-fasting day so you don't lose muscle. Carbs, you'll be okay. Protein, I don't know if you'll be okay. You've got to get that protein. You'll be okay, but you might lose muscle. And remember, you're not going to be fasting back-to-back days like this. That's not the plan. Okay, this is a longer fast that you're going to do periodically, maybe a few times per week. Okay, carbs will be lower if you have them. Then 8 p.m. is your last call before stopping. Even if you're not fasting the next day, you should still end your eating period at the respective time. Okay, it's a 4-hour eating window. It's not 20-hour fast and then a 20-hour eating window. It's a 20-hour fast, a 4-hour eating window. Put yourself to bed, get up, and start the next day fresh, whether you're fasting or not. Hopefully you're not, because I don't like to fast back to back. That is it. Straight up. See you tomorrow.